Resuming our study du projet de loi
of Bill C-15, an act to amend the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act and to make related and consequential amendments to other acts. We have the great pleasure to again hear from Mr. Don Head, the Correctional Services Commissioner of Canada. In fact, sir, you were here fairly recently to speak to another aspect. Welcome here.
Presence at this table, and we're very glad to welcome you back, Mr. Head. I believe you do have an opening statement before we go to questions.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to say good morning, Madam Chair, but it's now good afternoon. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. It's my pleasure to appear before you to respond to any questions you may have about the Correctional Service of Canada's response to implementing Bill C-15. As I mentioned to you during my previous appearance in September, I have been the Commissioner of the Correctional Service of Canada since June of 2008. As you are aware, mandatory minimum sentencing can lead to an overall increase in the number of offenders, as well as longer sentences at both the federal, provincial, and territorial levels. Although Correctional Service of Canada is mandated to administer sentences for offenders sentenced to 2 years or more, the service also supervises provincial offenders granted parole in all provinces in which the National Parole Board is the decision-making authority. As a result, Correctional Service Canada has been approved for funding of $23.3 million over 5 years to support an increase in case preparation workload for National Parole Board reviews and for the supervision of those offenders granted parole. At this time, we do not have any data to assess whether there will be a direct impact on the Correctional Service Canada's population levels. However, in the near term, we do not anticipate any impact on our institutional counts. However, we are continually assessing the cumulative impact of all proposed legislation and adjusting our plans as required. We also know that the introduction of mandatory minimum sentencing will increase the demand for offender programs and services related to substance abuse for provincial and territorial offenders impacted by this bill. Although 80% of the Correctional Service Canada offenders have been identified as demonstrating some difficulty with substance abuse, about 50% have direct link between their substance use and criminal behavior. As a result of investments through the budget process over the last 3 years, Correctional Service Canada continues to expand its capacity to deliver education, correctional programs, and other interventions to ensure we deliver the targeted public safety results. The Correctional Service Canada currently provides a range of substance abuse programs for specific populations and at various intensity levels to best match offenders to their most appropriate programming. Substance abuse in the offender population can be a serious problem, and CSC is committed to maintaining safe and secure institutions and communities by addressing the challenges posed by the presence of illicit drugs. In an effort to further combat the presence of illicit drugs in federal penitentiaries, CSC has in place an anti-drug strategy. This strategy focuses on 3 key elements: prevention, which focuses on preventing illicit drug use by offenders in institutions in the community; intervention, which focuses on reducing the demand for illicit drugs by supporting innovative and effective approaches to treating and rehabilitating offenders with illicit drug addictions; and enforcement, which focuses on reducing the supply of illicit drugs through the various efforts to investigate and prosecute drug crimes. The anti-drug strategy emphasizes a more strategic use of existing interdiction tools, an awareness program to inform staff, contractors, and visitors about the repercussions of smuggling drugs into penitentiaries, increased monitoring of those individuals potentially involved in the drug trade, increased disciplinary measures, and a broadening of inmates' awareness of substance abuse programs. The service is continuing to examine ways of strengthening drug interdiction monitoring activities. Additionally, on August 29, 2008, the Minister of Public Safety announced $122 million in funding over 5 years to help eliminate drugs in federal institutions. With this funding, and in line with the government's continued commitment to tackling crime, a more rigorous approach to drug interdiction is being implemented in order to create safe and secure environments where offenders can focus on rehabilitation. The funding supports an increase in our drug detection dog teams, an increase in our security intelligence capacity, both in the institutions and in our community offices, additional security equipment such as ion scanners and x-ray machines, enhanced perimeter security through related technologies, and the reinforcement of surge policies to better prevent drugs from entering penitentiaries and ensure that children are not being used to traffic illicit substances into institutions. Although Bill C-15 will introduce new challenges, I'm confident that CSC will continue to fill its mandate to ensure that we deliver good public safety results to Canadians. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I welcome any questions you or the committee may have today.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Head. And we do, of course, have questions. Senator Wallace, who will be followed by Senators Banks, Baker, Campbell, Angus, and Milne. And this time, colleagues, remember that we have a drop-dead cutoff time of 1:30. So. Oh, I'm sorry. I sit up and go to work in the Senate chamber deadline.
You were looking at me when you raised that, too, weren't you? Thank you, Mr. Head. Good to have you back again. Within the institutions, having adequate facilities and services, in particular treatment services, are critically important. And as we've heard from many witnesses, in order to be able to provide that, it requires money. And I'm wondering if you can give us a bit of an overview of the total budget you have for your agency, and perhaps some indication of, over the last 3 or 4 years, any progress that's been made or any increases in that funding, so we can get a sense, is the funding moving in the right direction or not?
Yes, thanks, Senator, for that question. My budget currently is $2.3 billion, which covers all aspects of our service, the services that we deliver in the institutions, in the community, through our regional headquarters, and in our national headquarters office. As it relates specifically to programs and overall interventions, we are currently spending about $130 million a year, which is broken down to about around $60 million for correctional reintegration programs, around $22 million for education programs, and around $47 million for employment skills, vocational skills development type programs. So it comes to around $130 million that we're spending. Over the next several years, I will see my budget, particularly in the correctional program areas, increase to $144 million next year, $154 million the following year, and up to $164 million by the year after. We, as well as part of those increases in the subsequent years, we received, as part of the what's called the strategic reinvestment process, as part of the overall strategic review that all government departments go through, we received a reinvestment of $44 million, which has allowed us to do work specifically on our offender intake assessment process, to strengthen our capacity to deliver violence prevention programs, community maintenance programs, which have a focus on substance abuse, our Aboriginal programs, the implementation of Aboriginal pathways units across the country, and monies for the implementation of electronic monitoring dependent upon the passage of Bill C-43.
I realize there's always more money could be used to take your programs to improve them even further, but overall, are you generally satisfied with the increases in funding you've had? Do you feel it's providing you with adequate funding to do the job that you are responsible to do?
Overall, Senator, I would say that we're in a good position. We are continuing to assess the impacts of future bills and what that means on the population and how we need to respond